Before we dive into today's episode, I've got some exciting news. FutureLab, Australia's first longevity supplement range, is now available at Chemist Warehouse and leading health food stores. Now, this is a lot more than a regular supplement range. It really is a mission. The experts at FutureLab have developed formulas designed to support your well-being today, tomorrow, and beyond. Welcome to FutureLab, where we explore the cutting edge of health span and longevity. I'm Danny Urbinder, and with me is my co-host Trevor Hendy.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here. And I just was reminded this morning when I was thinking about podcasts today, exploring human potential through the lens of science and soul. You know, this idea that we've had from the start, let's explore human potential through the lens of science and soul. And I find it hilarious that in some ways I'm the guy. Either side of you've got two people sitting there. I'm the guy that's sort of the soul guy, and the lady over here, our other co-host, Dr. Denise Furness, is the science.
Yes.
And it's funny, it's kind of
I'm the guy in the middle in purgatory.
You're just perfection, mate. You're just in the middle. Yeah. You're the glue that binds us together.
You're trying to keep us on track.
Trying.
You've forgotten more about nutrition than I've learned. So right. I know that much, I'd imagine, because you are so well studied. It's so cool seeing you guys.
Yeah. And you get things really quickly. You know, when we used to talk science, even though you didn't have the background that I had, you were just, we can have great conversations. But getting back to what you just said, Trev, and hello to everyone. I'm really excited.
Dr. Denise Furness.
I'm really excited for this particular episode. When you and I first met, and thank you to Danny for bringing us together, co-host for this podcast, that came out almost immediately, didn't it? We just met first time and we're like science and soul, and it just sat so well. I don't think we've talked about it much here, but for the listeners, that's sort of what we aim to have in the background. Yeah.
Is to get that understanding that life is magic, all right down to the cellular level and to the genetic level, but through to the spiritual level and the feeling level and all these sort of things it's all magic. It all works together. It's like a cascade of things. Yeah. And if you can switch it on in a good way, everything switches on. Like, the rising tide floats all boats, And if we switch one thing off that's, dominant enough, eventually it'll switch a bunch of other things off, and we call that sickness.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about today's episode. The light in you guys' eyes when you're talking about this study that you've come across is pretty cool.
Well, it's not just a study, but it's a nutrient first.
Yes.
Because it's a nutrient I've been interested in for a long time, and for personal reasons as well as just general interest, because I know that it's got some good science behind it.
And
Denise
we've got a product, the Deep Wave Sleep Booster, that's actually been inspiring us for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is right in this alley. So,
and I think we talk about that, but we also did a little bit of an exercise before we came on air, and that was you took us through a bit of a breathing exercise, because this product is all about centering, focusing, calming the nervous system down.
Yes.
And you took us through an exercise. We actually popped a couple of those.
That was an exercise.
And then we went through the exercise.
I feel like a Joe Rogan podcast. We've popped a couple of
very relaxed and alert.
So certainly the Deep Wave Sleep Booster won't have hit us just yet, but we took some of that.
It worked immediately.
Okay, there you go.
Is that why I feel so good?
That's it.
The breath exercise.
If we break it down to the simple principles that I've been working on for a while, and that is, we talk a lot about dis-ease, as in disease, but dis-ease is dis-ease. So something's not comfortable, something's rattling, something's not still, it's vibrating, it's shaking, it's disrupted, it's interrupted. Normal, pathways or flows are interrupted. And we might call that, a lot of people have stress or anxiety. Something's not right. My thoughts telling me that past might happen again in the immediate future if I don't sort this out right now. And so we're not in the present moment. And there's a whole bunch of, once again, cascade effects from not being in a place of stillness, not being in a place of I'm here and now. Not being in a place of acceptance of what's playing out right now. So we can have something dramatic play out in front of us and we can be in resistance to it, and then that'll create a whole lot of effects. The same thing can play out and we can go, I resisted that last time, but I've learnt to breathe, and I might breathe, calm myself down. It's not real. It's just this too shall pass. Eckhart Tolle talks about, this will pass. I can just relax, just be with this experience, not go up against it. And then we go into acceptance. And when we accept the situation, we can then embrace the situation.
So I'm going to, because I've always heard this idea of acceptance, and often you would think that acceptance is an active thing, that you need to somehow actively accept something, but it's not like that at all, is it? Acceptance is something that you just allow to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, I am here.
Yeah.
I'm allowing everything else to be exactly as it is.
So you can't force yourself to accept something.
So it
you
might
just
be
need to
something
be.
terrible's happening.
Yeah.
But if we go from a place of it's terrible, it's bad, I've got to fix it. Sometimes we need that fight or flight mechanism, of course, to get in and the kids running across the highway, all those sort of things.
But the danger passes and our nervous system settles down.
Nervous system's still going, or it's not really that big a danger, and we're preempting that. My son's going out and this is going to happen, or my daughter's this is going to happen, or that email has come in and it's all going to fall apart, the situation, or this, we feel a bit distant from my partner, he or she's going to leave me, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the memory creates this dis-ease inside of us, and we're so worried about it recreating itself that we go into a mode or a modality of controlling. So when we're not in acceptance, we're in resistance to it being the way it is. And rather than actually making a difference to the situation, as in, let's be still, work out from a smart, intelligent, maybe even intuitive or instinctive way how to deal with something, we go into control mode, which actually means we're out of control. So when we go into need to control, actually means we're out of control and we're trying to get control back. But the number one thing we're out of control with is our own thoughts. The situation looks like it's going to be like that again, so we go into that panic mode. So acceptance simply means it might not be ideal and I might want to change it, but it is happening. If I think it can't happen, well, then I'm in a state of insanity because I'm not allowing something to happen that's already happened.
Yeah.
So it's really, when people get it, when I first got this, I was like, oh my God. So it's not about not changing things, because if I grew a bit of a belly, and I just went, oh, well, accept it, I wouldn't actually go, why is that happening? Am I getting a bit slow? Is that going to affect my health? I wouldn't do anything to change it. But if I go, look at that bloody belly, I can't do it, and I start stressing or judging it or hating it, I'm creating cortisol, adrenaline, creating all the bad hormones to actually lose weight anyway. I'm now stressing. I'm going to grab on to more things. I'm going to eat comfort foods and crave a beer in the afternoon to relax or whatever it is. So said a lot in a short period of time here, but ultimately when we go into acceptance, and I'll go back to the breath thing, we actually just allow ourselves to be with what's going on. So what we did before the podcast is we did 5 conscious breaths, and we breathed in through our nose with our eyes closed. We felt the temperature on the back of our throat. So we straight away switched off all of our other senses and just went right to this gentle place in the back of the throat. We breathed into the belly first, from a very flat belly all the way into the belly. Then we stopped, paused, and then we breathed into the chest. We paused, then we breathed up to the head breath, or the free diving breath with a bit of a sip on top, like a, and you went, I can't get any more.
Which was difficult, by the way.
Because we don't normally open those lungs and those pathways right up. But it goes in, and then all of a sudden we're oxygenating, of course, because we're full. But we pause for about 5 seconds, and then we started a 10-second breath out. 10 seconds is a long time to breathe out.
It felt really nice. And that was
letting
really
go.
letting go for me. Very helpful, because I was feeling a little bit worked up.
So we did that 5 times. And because we're doing this 3-part breath in, we never breathe in 3 times in a row when we're in stress. We're running from a saber-toothed tiger. We don't go, we go. So literally the vagus nerve, or the autonomous nervous system, the vagus nerve does the switching, but the system recognizes that we are not actually in fight or flight. We're not in, there's nothing to worry about, because look at us. The body is telling the rest of the system that we're actually relaxed, because we've had 3 in-breaths and then held it, and then had a really slow, long out-breath. So there's a switch that happens probably about the 2nd or 3rd breath quite often. And you said it straight away. We went, oh, vagus nerve. And we switch from sympathetic nervous system, which is amygdala, to parasympathetic, which is prefrontal cortex. And we go from primarily cortisol and adrenaline, which are very helpful hormones when needed, but also dopamine, and we're getting the reward, all that sort of stuff. But we switched to oxytocin, serotonin, and oxytocin is the hormone of connection, right?
Yeah, love.
Love. And so the first thing comes in is love for myself, love for this moment, acceptance of the moment. So I think, Dan, you can say what you felt, but we just did 5 breaths right before we started. What did you feel?
I felt centered and present is what I felt, and relaxed.
And I think you said, Denise, you said, that feels better, or...
Oh, it was instant relief. And for the listeners, if you haven't guessed already, we're talking about just stress and sleep and those kind of things that many of us struggle with. And although I had an amazing trip in New York, which we'll share if you've listened to the other podcast and that comes out, I was a bit nervous about this big trip, but I've put a few things in place and I had a great time. And actually this podcast is off the back of me coming home raving about this product, Deep Wave Sleep Booster, which I only took at night with the L-Theanine. But I had it before I gave my talk in New York and I felt on. That's the only way I can describe it. Just clear, energized. I always thought the Deep Wave Sleep Booster with the L-Theanine was more about sleep, relaxation.
Deep rest.
Yes, getting you calm for sleep. Yeah, but now I know too, it's not just relaxation for sleep. And I have noticed that it does improve my HRV. I do sleep better.
Which is heart rate variability.
Yeah, haven't had it the last few nights, by the way. Ran out. Going to be taking some home today. But after our last podcast, when we spoke with Kathleen, she was saying how she gives L-Theanine to her high-stressed executive, overachieving type A personality people and says, have this in your most stressful period of the day. So I have it for sleep. I thought, well, I'm going to take it before I do my presentation because I'm really nervous. I'm in New York. This is, the conference. It was an honour to be able to speak with all of these people. So there's an extra element of nerves, and I felt fantastic. And I said to you this morning, I wonder if my cortisol dropped because you always have a certain amount of nerves. And anyway, we've been talking about it, and I can't wait to discuss it. But the breathing also came about because just before we hopped on the podcast, I went through. Even though New York was great, I've got home and there's 1,000 emails and doing this and I haven't trained and Trev was like, let's do a breathing exercise. It was a bit like that. And
let's slow us all down.
Yeah, honestly, it really does just center you and all of that just kind of let go.
Just getting back to your first point, Trev, because I think that what you're describing is something that a lot of us can easily get locked into. So it becomes a vicious cycle where the stress feeds the stress and you really don't know how to find your way out. Breathing exercise is one thing. Very powerful. What we're going to be talking about today, which is, the key ingredient in Deep Wave Sleep Booster, which is L-Theanine, they work well together.
They really do.
But as you just mentioned, Denise, even though it's in a product called Deep Wave Sleep Booster, L-Theanine, which has been traditionally used for sleep, it doesn't induce a sense of grogginess.
A drowsiness,
It doesn't make you drowsy. It doesn't work or knock you out like you would expect certain sleep meds or certain herbs to do. What it does do is it calms you down in a similar way to that breath exercise. Because when we did that breath exercise, what we did, we switched on the vagus nerve. We started inducing alpha waves, which is the brain waves that you have when you're meditating. And that is a relaxed sense of alertness, which is what you would have been experiencing. So you would have been relaxed, you would have been comfortable, you would have been present, but you also would have been switched on,
I was so
focused, and know what you need to do. And that's exactly what L-Theanine
Which
does.
we could also call present.
Yeah.
Actually present, because we're not used to not being present. We think all this fog is us being present, but when you really are present, you go, oh my goodness, I feel switched on, alive, like I'm present.
And very me, I think because I was more relaxed but still very alert. So something happened at the beginning I was doing a lunchtime session. So it was a big lunchtime session. People are sitting down and eating. And I didn't realise quite a few people commented how I just commanded the entire, this is a big space.
Everyone stopped eating.
Well, one of the staff members, their phone went off. And, I'm a bit of a joker. So I made a joke, but I turned it straight into epigenetics and cortisol and said, no, you turn your phone off. And then I said, what's happened now is there's an epigenetic change that turns on this gene. And I just went into this full, and apparently, I knew I had the room. It was a wonderful, it's probably one of my best presentations I've done. It was great because of the, the vibe and just feeling like everyone's with you. But I was told by a few people it was that moment that I captured people. And I'm always a storyteller, but the stories just interwove so well. And I think it's because I did feel really clear. And when I say on, it was my brain was firing.
Yeah.
And although I know my stuff, sometimes, that traveling to the other side of the world, not sleeping so
Gathering
well.
your thoughts and making sure that you're in logical sequence and what's that word? I always know that word and now I forgot it. Yeah, all
you're
that
up there
sort of
going,
stuff.
I know this stuff.
You
but
find when your mind's clear, the soul starts to speak too.
Yeah.
So this word that you're looking for it and it just comes. It's like it arrives down a pathway and you're like, exactly what you need to say comes out.
Yeah, what you're talking about now, I felt like, yes, I was doing a presentation of my slides, but I did feel like my soul was with the people. That was the difference. And sometimes I don't have that connection because the nerves step in or whatever it is, the fatigue.
Bit
and
of
you know
performance
when
anxiety
and you know
sometimes,
when you're at your best. You might do an okay job, but you know when you've connected with people, and there was a feeling. It was great. And just getting back to the supplement here too, we're talking about the reason why I'm focusing so much on L-Theanine, and I've come back raving, and I'm excited to do the podcast to understand more about it as well. There is another ingredient called lemon balm. Now, I've always loved lemon balm. It's not that the other ingredient isn't wonderful. It's just that lemon balm is something I've taken for a very long time because it's particularly good for the anxiety, the hypothyroid. But the L-Theanine is relatively new to me, and I am noticing it. I really am.
Yeah, yeah. So look, as we mentioned, and we'll go into why L-Theanine actually works the way it does. But just to give a little bit of background, L-Theanine, it's an amino acid. It's found in green tea. So that's the main source that we know of in green tea. So it's not something that is an essential amino acid, but it does have specific effects. And we know one of those effects is due to its ability to induce alpha waves, it reduces cortisol. So straight away, your stress response
So hang on,
is
say that
dampened.
again. So it
it induces alpha waves. So we
induces,
go into
yeah,
why
yeah,
that happens.
Yeah, which is what we talk meditation.
That
of.
meditation state.
Yeah,
So your
yeah.
brain sort of works at certain frequencies.
Yep.
When you're at a more stress frequency, then
And when you're in the stress frequency, the brainwave is
do you know what? I think it's a delta.
it's delta. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yep.
Yeah.
That's when I'm not connecting with the audience.
Yeah, delta. The Delta Airlines lands upside down.
Yeah. Which would look and all necessary for survival.
Yes.
But the world that we live in and the way that I think we've trained our minds is, in fact, we probably experience alpha waves the least.
Yeah.
And it's the healthiest,
And they're the healthiest.
state to be in.
Most profound, most beneficial.
Yeah,
And you feel
absolutely.
good, yeah.
So here we've got a supplement that can actually help to induce that.
So the L-Theanine induces the alpha waves.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that happens.
Can I say one more thing
Yeah,
before
sure.
you move on? Because some people might be thinking, oh, it's an amino acid. So often when we think about amino acids, we think protein, we think animal products. You said it comes from the
Green
tea
tea.
leaves. It's
Yeah.
different. So this particular amino acid is not like other amino acids that are often structural, making proteins. This is actually a signaling molecule.
Yeah.
And apparently it helps with stress adaptation in the plant as well.
Okay, well, there you go. So it obviously serves a key purpose in the
Yes.
plant, but the way that we've adapted and evolved to be amongst,
Isn't
we
life
use
ma- isn't
plants
life
and-
magical?
Yeah, absolutely.
I only learned that this morning, by the way, because I'm now reading about L-Theanine too.
Right.
So, look, I mean, we can step back from that as to why it induces alpha waves, and it really has to do with how it interacts with neurotransmitters and receptors in the brain. So what it does do is it dampens or downregulates the excitatory neurotransmitters in our brain, so particularly glutamate. That's the transmitter that we associate with stress, with anxiety.
With anxiety.
So it dampens that down, but it also induces the production and the release of GABA, and that is our relaxation neurotransmitter.
That's that mood changer.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So it comes with, I mean, even our anti-anxiety medications work on GABA receptors as a way of sort of upregulating that so that we feel calm.
Can I throw something in here just to weave it through as we go? Is that I'm hearing a lot of transmitter signaling,
yeah.
etc. One of the things that I've loved discovering in the last decade or so is almost love seeing everything as intelligence. The Nikola Tesla thing. if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Everything is energy, and it's vibrating at different frequencies, which forms the physical world and all of its different
We're
densities.
describing brainwaves. That's exactly what brainwaves are.
So
Yeah,
if we say signaling, and transmitting, and we start putting the word frequency in and energy, we're talking about, there's magic in there. We've just got to tap into it. So what are we signaling to the body? So clearly some things we're putting in. So the L-Theanine helps the plant.
The stress response.
Stress
adapt to
response in the
stress,
plant.
yes.
We take it, helps us with the stress response. So it's the same signal, which I just find fascinating, is that everything's energy, so therefore everything's a signal. We're giving cues. When we talk to each other, we're giving cues.
Sure.
We talk about body language.
Everything we put in our mouth, all our food is nothing but signals and messages.
And also our body language. When we're talking to each other, we're walking through the shopping centre, we're at a meeting, and the way we sit and all this sort of stuff, it's all these, everything. I just keep seeing cues, signals, transmissions, so that's all relevant because it's all energy.
Yeah.
And the magic is in there, but the dysfunction's also in there as well. So we've just got to find what connects, creates the alpha waves. Organisers. Well, when I hear alpha waves, I hear everything's organised.
Yeah.
When I hear delta
what
waves, I
Denise
hear
just
it's
described
disorganised.
is exactly what. Yeah.
My thoughts, because for me, sometimes I get, even if it's not anxiety, there's just an excitement. There is a lot. There's a lot of things happening at a very fast rate in my head most of the time, and then you ramp that up with the nerves, and sometimes it's hard to articulate, because the thoughts are running so quickly in my mind, and it's almost, and then I talk really fast as well. But I didn't have that issue this particular time. So, but just to step back and to be true to the science, a little bit of a scientist in me, not that many listeners will probably worry about this, but I mentioned about the stress adaptation of the plant. Now, I definitely don't claim to be an expert. I'm just now excited about L-Theanine because I'm actually noticing a difference. And sometimes when you take supplements, you don't notice. It doesn't mean it's not helping you. If you've got a nutrient deficiency, you can take a few months. But I've noticed that I personally respond well to this. But with the plant, it's a little bit different. They don't have the same neurotransmitters as us.
They don't have neurotransmitters.
They don't have neurotransmitters at all because they don't have a brain. So even though there's a stress adaptation, it's a little bit different to us. There is GABA in the plant, but apparently that helps with growth and other things, unlike us with calming. So it's similar but different. Just to clarify that, in case there is an expert listening going, what are they talking about back there?
Right.
It's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, but ultimately through that neurotransmitter activity, the brain adapts and then it induces that alpha wave pattern, and you get that relaxed state of alertness. And the reason it helped you with your talk is because that's the state you want to be in, to be switched on, yes, but not hyped up.
Yes.
And as you said, not disorganized in your thoughts.
And
you're
you're
aware
talking,
and you're relaxed.
Yeah.
And you're right on. The reason it helps with sleep is, look, sleep is a natural process. You don't need to do anything to allow sleep to come over you. It's just something that...
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm 100% sure. In fact, the more you try and sleep, the further away sleep comes from you. The reason L-Theanine works is it puts you into that relaxed state of alertness so that you don't try and control sleep. You're just relaxed and it happens. It sort of washes over you. Yeah. So it doesn't knock you out. It just allows the body to do what it's adapted to do for millions and millions of years.
Yeah, and I love that. And this is my new fascination with L-Theanine, because I always had associated it with the relaxation and sleep. This is very new for me to realise the clarity it provided in my brain, and now realising that's something you can have in times when you are feeling quite stressed. We had some just before the podcast, so let's see if halfway through we just become these amazingly articulate.
But that then does, I suppose, raise the question, because yes, it's in a product called Deep Wave Sleep Booster, but it can be used for so much more than that. And you've just described one scenario. But anyone that needs to be switched on, but I've got to stay in a relaxed state, because if stress overwhelms me, then I'm not going to perform, then this is the product for you. So you think students, you think sort of high-performing executives, you think people that need to stay focused under pressure. Any of those scenarios, this is the product, or this is the ingredient that you would want to think of.
Because another way of saying it, it's switching on that relaxation, but it's also, by virtue of that, switching off the agitation.
The agitation, and allowing you to focus.
The thing underneath of resistance and agitated and just a little bit, I'm trying to even think of the words, like, I just feel a bit something.
Combobulated.
Disrupted.
Yeah.
It's so, it definitely has that feeling of, and it's the same as when you're doing, deep breathing, or you're effectively meditating, or you're doing a nice walk on the beach down in that ionic atmosphere where the waves are breaking and the negative ions are actually balancing your system out, after all the air conditioning and dry weather that we have, and you see everybody walking along the water's edge, not up the top, because there's an ionic atmosphere down there that's actually affects people. You can't see it, but it's very similar things because everything settles, everything calms, and we're really good people when we're calm. We are really, humans are
we're not
very,
necessarily
very good
evil
when we're not in our fear and worry and control and stress and everything else. And we can all be shits.
Yeah.
When we're actually in that other state, we can be quite not great to be around.
Yeah. Yeah, so this helps us not be shits.
Yes.
Like my husband said to me yesterday, you go out of your way to just help so many people. He goes, you're trying too hard. He goes, but then you don't treat me like that. I was like, darling, that's not true. And he looked at me. I was like, oh, maybe I'll have to have some more of
the
this
old
at
saying,
home.
we treat the people that we love the worst.
Yes.
Are we able, can we talk about dosages?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
I thought we'd go through the study first.
Yes.
So the reason that
And I'm also interested, when you've done the study, for you to go through these ingredients a little bit for me, because there's some fascinating things in here that I don't know so much about.
Yeah.
But that's the way things are being mixed these days. Some wonderful companies and great scientists, chemists and everything are actually learning this needs to go with this. And that's what the real breakthroughs are for me at the moment.
Yeah, I think
What
it's
is the
these two
L-Theanine
things for
going
me.
together with? So after we go through the study, I'd love to go through that too.
Yeah,
'cause
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
And
blowing
who
my
this
mind
could
with a
be
lot of
good
these
for,
products.
And also make sure we say at the end, because something like lemon balm isn't necessarily so good for someone with high POTH. If your metabolism is slow, you're already slow. There are certain cases, but we'll talk about that at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pretty gentle herb, though, so you'd have to be pretty slow to.
Well, when we get into dosages, we can
pretty
talk about,
slow.
that the dosages that are potentially going to impact certain conditions.
Yeah, sure.
But you have found a study.
Well, I
so
did, and the
sort of-
reason that we brought this up was because I came across a study that came out mid last year, and it looked at not just L-Theanine, but the form of L-Theanine that we use in this product, which is known as alpha wave L-Theanine. So it's a patented form of L-Theanine. So it's standardized, it's pure, and it's also been tested. So we know it's been clinically trialed and shown to actually have certain areas of efficacy. And this is a recent study that looked at L-Theanine, and it's a double-blind placebo trial.
Which is sorry,
You can go for it. The
I
gold
just started
standard.
exactly. So we're talking about double-blind placebo,
Randomized.
and randomized means that the actual scientists the researchers running the study don't know who's getting the placebo or the L-Theanine, as well as the person participating in the study. So it's randomized, but both people are blind. So there can't be an element of bias because no one actually knows. So randomized, double blind.
Yeah. And so there were 30 people over 28 days. They split them into two. 15 people got the placebo, 15 people got the alpha wave L-Theanine. And what they found, they did a measure of salivary cortisol as well as a sort of a barrage of stress tests to measure anxiety, to measure, what were some of the other measures that we had there? I can't remember.
Oh, you went through them all with me.
It was anxiety, it was stress response, and it was cognition. And at day 14 and day 28 was when they measured those. And what they found...
And baseline, before they started the study.
So, and they were pretty much all the same at baseline. And they did find that L-Theanine had significantly improved the stress response, anxiety, and cognition. Cortisol, not so much.
By 14 days? By the 14 days?
By 14 days and 28 days.
28 days,
yeah.
And what sort of percentages are we talking?
30%, around that,
30%?
yeah. So
Wow.
from memory, the stress response was about 30%. Decrease of 18% in the perceived stress score, and improved by 22% of what's called the Stroop test, and that's a depression anxiety type test.
Wow.
So quite significant.
That's
for
really
me,
good.
I noticed it on the day too,
Yeah.
and even immediate. So with sleep, because I'm now comparing when I take this product and when I don't, I'm looking because I track with my Whoop, so I can see firsthand, and people can do that too. I mean, I'm not suggesting everyone needs to track. If you're not into that, then don't go down that path. For some people, it's more anxiety tracking, but there are some people that love it. If you love it,
another stress for some
exactly.
people. Yeah.
But if you do like doing this is another little fun thing you can do to see if it's working. Because, as I mentioned before, my heart rate variability, which is a measure of a bit of, that stress response improves when I do have this. So
There you
that's
go.
immediate.
So,
That's
and it
not
goes
even
to show you the
14
effect
days.
is immediate. So
Wow.
it's not accumulative. It's not something that you need to wait for 30 days before you start to notice an effect. And that's because as an amino acid, it sort of works on those receptors and those neurotransmitters immediately.
Wow.
So,
I love it.
yeah.
So you're talking about a 30% gain there, but then a 17% in perceived stress.
Well, that
so
was
that's
what-
interesting too, because it can be having a more of a positive effect on your system than you even perceive, because we just perceive things the
Well,
way
that's
we
a bit
perceive
more of
them.
a subjective test.
Yeah, that's
isn't it?
right.
You say how much less
But that's
or
an
how
average.
less.
It's an average of it. So it's
Yeah,
kind
well,
of.
they would sort of they'd be asked a series of questions and they would answer those, and then you.
But I could imagine over time that would change too.
Well, I would
because you'd
think
start
so,
to get a
yeah.
reduction in stress, and then you'd be like, oh, their perception of the stress reduction over a longer period of time would be a higher percentage.
Yeah.
And these are questionnaires and tests that have been validated and used in other clinical trials. So this is not something they've just put together. So when we do research, if we're going to use a questionnaire, we want to use something that's published and validated to
So it's
show
comparisons.
that it matches with sometimes whether it's a blood marker, another clinical marker, things like that. So all validated tests.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we didn't mention also is that it does improve sleep quality as well.
Can
So
I just throw that in for a second? Because of all the studies, all the stuff we've done, people we've spoken to, but all the things I've been researching for years, is that sleep is becoming like literally is a superpower.
Yeah.
And so if you are doing it relatively well, but you're unaware of it, you're not aware of how well it's working for you until you start to have bad sleep patterns and bad sleep quality and all sort of reduced sleep performance. Even then still, you don't often correlate that this is the direct reason why I'm having these other experiences over here.
Absolutely.
But when you do improve, you've had a bad experience with sleep for a little while and you improve it, you then are able to recognize straight away that, oh my God, how important is sleep?
Yeah.
Because it's like such a powerful thing. Everything from, obviously what the body's doing and the regulation of healing certain pathways in
your
the body.
immune system's turned on, your gut microbiome's working, your hormones are being regulated.
Your nervous system is resetting, rebooting.
Your
and
muscle,
so
if you were exercising and you wanted to grow or maintain muscle, you could not do that if you did not sleep properly. You would lose muscle and gain weight.
Yeah.
So gain fat mass.
Yep.
You would increase your risk
Metabolism.
of diabetes. You'd increase your risk of heart disease. You increase your risk of depression, of cognitive decline, and of an early death.
So I don't want to throw out some
yeah.
percentage that I don't know, except I would say the number as I'm working with more and more people. It's like so many more people are affected by their poorer sleep quality than need be than they realise.
Yeah.
And that's why I find this fascinating.
Well, I think we've
because
forgotten what good sleep is.
Yeah.
And I think that
So
we often go to bed
overstimulated.
and we're all aware we need 7 to 8 hours. So we go to bed and we lie in bed for 8 hours, even though we might have had really sort of rubbish sleep, maybe not gone in deep enough. And then when we go into REM, it's really shallow when we're in and out of sleep. That's not really 7 or 8 hours of sleep. Often we sort of wake up and we might take 20 minutes to go back to sleep again.
And then there's this other part that I had an experience a little while ago where I was just not getting past 8 hours, 8.5 occasionally, but feeling like as if I need to sleep more. So the quality wasn't there. And then one day, various things fell into place. I actually slept in a different room, different corner, different energy, all sorts of stuff. And I slept 10 hours, but I could tell the last 2 hours was I may as well have had life reboot. It was the craziest feeling. I woke up, I'm like, I feel really good. Like, no, I mean, honey, like, I mean, really good. Like, okay, then no, I'm telling you, really good, because the difference. So I don't know at that particular point in time what it's to do with the length of it, but I fell so deep in that last couple of hours really took me somewhere that was, I almost got the full reboot.
What we call
Rather than
that,
just back to
restorative, regenerative.
Back to base level, I got back up into, thriving sort of feeling.
Sleep is such a complex thing, and
such
there's
a
so many
powerful
different
thing.
stages and so many different effects that go on there. We don't really know the full complexity of it.
We're
we
learning more.
just found the lymphatic system in the brain that gets switched on during our sleep as well. That's only been a recent discovery where we realized that we're actually washing out all the toxins and metabolites from our brain during our sleep
While we're
through this
sleeping.
lymphatic system that's only just been discovered.
And
So
to me, that
it's-
must have an effect on later life things like dementia, Alzheimer's,
Well,
all
we
that
know
sort of
it
stuff.
does, very
Right.
strongly. And that's the link with sleep and cognitive decline.
Have you ever wondered what a healthier, stronger future you might look like? With Melrose Future Lab, Australia's first longevity supplement range, you can now optimise your health span routine by supporting cellular energy, metabolic well-being and muscle maintenance, as well as much, much more. And you can find this range at Chemist Warehouse and leading health food stores.
Have you heard the TED Talk it's called Sleep is Our Superpower, by one of the leading experts in sleep from the UK, and he starts the talk. Basically, it's the first line. I think he says something about sleep, lack of sleep, and size of testicles. That's how he grabs people's attention. He basically says
That's how he grabs people's attention.
grabs those testicles.
Grabs them by the balls.
Basically says, if you're not sleeping a certain amount of hours, you have smaller testicles.
Wow.
It's hilarious.
And I wonder who actually put their hand up for that trial.
Exactly.
How many hours of sleep do you
and
get?
all
You
the
might
men in
have
the
measured your
audience went, "You've
testicles."
got my attention."
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't want your balls to shrink, you should focus on your sleep.
And that's probably directly associated or correlated with testosterone production as well. And that is definitely
that's a
affected by
major one,
sleep.
yes.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
The production of testosterone during sleep.
Yeah, all our hormones, regulated while we're sleeping. So during the day, we're responding to the outside world, the sounds, the smells, the light, everything's happening. But at night, where everything is within us, we're not responding to the outside world. We're not just passed out. There's so much going on, like you talked about in the brain, but in the body as well. But it's within us. It's not about the outside world. It's the internal healing,
working.
repair, building, restoring.
What a fascinating miracle our life is, that the way it's just been set up. We awake during the day trying to conquer the world and learn things and everything else, and then the life itself says, you're going to sleep now.
Yeah.
Functioning well, you go to sleep and everything gets healed, all these functions and pathways. It's not like you're wasting time.
No, and it's not like you're losing consciousness either. It's just a different form of consciousness. Your brain
really
goes
cool.
somewhere else.
That's a whole other podcast, isn't it, where we can go.
So, look, just to get back to the study. So, look, everything in terms of particularly the perception of stress and anxiety, improved sleep score. The one thing that did come out the same was the salivary cortisol level. So you measure cortisol in saliva. It's free cortisol. It's very easy to measure it at any time space. That did come out the same. Now, my thinking is that just taking a random cortisol sample at day 14 and day 28 is not really going to be a good reflection of what cortisol has been doing as a result of taking L-Theanine. It's just a brief snapshot in time when, in fact, cortisol fluctuates, it ebbs and flows over the day, and we're not really going to get a good sense of how L-Theanine actually impacted cortisol. From your perspective, do you think that would be the case?
Yeah, and with cortisol, as you said, depending on the time of day and when they say there's no change, I think what it means is there wasn't a significant difference identified, and it may be that there wasn't a big enough change. But again, it has to be the person has to do it at almost the exact same time to get.
And also when they took this as well.
And it's going to be dependent on when they took the supplement. So, for example, if we were testing a morning cortisol and you took it at, 7 o'clock, but then you wanted to do a repeat and you did that a month later at 9 o'clock, that's actually not... Yep. That's not comparable because your cortisol is, starting to
rise.
Yes.
So we don't know from the test though what time they took it, do we?
No. So we have what's called a cortisol awakening response. We actually get a bit of a spike in the morning. Often we think of cortisol as bad, but actually it's a bit anti-inflammatory, gets you out of bed.
No, that's right. So let's state that firstly. Cortisol is a hugely beneficial hormone that's in the body that we need for so many functions, and it's involved in healing aspects as well, like in the right balance.
Yes.
So I wonder whether just the cortisol was similar, but the balance of all other things means it's actually in its right place.
Yes, and not too high, not too low.
Yeah.
So after that cortisol awakening response, then it's slowly going down as the day sort of goes on, and by the time we go to bed, we want it to be quite low. And then we have melatonin rising, and melatonin is that sleep hormone. So we need that relationship. If the cortisol's still high at nighttime, you're not going to get that melatonin coming up. It won't rise until cortisol comes down.
Yeah. Which, I mean, look, there have been studies that do show that L-Theanine does dampen down cortisol.
Yeah.
I felt like it did.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I wasn't measuring, but, I think cortisol's the stress hormone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for me, who does get quite overstimulated really easily, sometimes I can't sleep because I feel like that cortisol at night.
So in my mind as well, who would you give L-Theanine to? Well, I would think anyone who is at risk or has a metabolic disorder, type 2 diabetes or perhaps cardiovascular disease, where cortisol does play a key role in the development of that disease, especially if they're suffering from stress and high cortisol, this is a consideration. And of course, improving their sleep also goes a long way to addressing some of the underlying causes there.
And I wonder about, for me too, lots of thoughts, not being able to gather those thoughts sometimes when you are overstimulated, leaning towards that ADHD type. Like, I wonder if it could be beneficial there because...
Way more people than we realise.
Because there is just that sort of overstimulation then can really sort of throw things out.
And it's not just the overstimulation with ADHD, it is the scattered thoughts. It is thinking this, then this, then this, which makes them wonderfully creative people because they can pull together all disparate thoughts and create something new that people haven't thought about. But when it's dysregulated, then it turns into chaos.
There's no peace for them.
And something like that, because you just described the experience. You felt focused, relaxed, switched on, you gathered your thoughts, you were able to actually deliver and, you felt sharp. That's what we want to get.
That would be my biggest thing, is that sometimes there's just too many thoughts going on.
They're not organised.
And then trying to share that with an audience when it's possibly already a complex topic, and I'm trying to get that across. And there are some people that will bounce around with me. Often they're the ADHD people too, and they'll be like, "Oh, I love you." And
best talk ever.
They're like, "Oh my
so
God,
they don't
you're
cancel
mad.
each other out. They just amplify each other.
It's like she's a mad scientist, and they can follow, and they love the speed. But then you lose other people. And even if someone is that way inclined, regardless, it's always nicer to have something that is just a little bit more. Just bring it down a little bit. Just keep everyone in that nice, calmer space.
Well, I think I love the word coherence. That when something is coherent, it's aligned, it's organised, it's peaceful, it's organised. And the word organised as well. But coherent, means two, joined. So leads to connection and compassion, And so the coherence is a really interesting part when we get coherent thoughts or coherent between our feelings, our heart and our brain, our mind. There's a coherence between the two. The mind is not saying something opposite to the heart. When they start saying the same thing, it's like a whole body yes, we call it. I've got a whole body yes. Everything in me says, yes, I've got to go do that. So
that's how I felt. I finished the talk and it felt good from head to toe.
Yes.
Honestly, head to toe.
And everybody, you would have felt part of
the group.
That room. And that room would have felt part of you. And I've said on the podcast before, I love that just a viewpoint, but our greatest truth is that we are all one, or at the very least we share the same life force, the one life force. Our greatest distortion is that we are all separate and competing for resources. So if we look through just the mind and body, it's clear we're in different bodies. It's clear we've got different colour hair and different genders and ages and all sorts of other preferences and everything else. So we look separate. But when we actually start to find that inspiration inside of us, like you're talking about an inspired topic, that inspiration binds everybody together and they start to all feel the same life force.
We all share a moment.
You share a moment. And that moment to me is the moment that we are craving, because you want to be close with your family, with your partner, with your kids, with your community. What's community once again? So the other word that I'm picking up on a lot is organisation. So the organisation of our thoughts. But what's at the start of that? Organ. What do we have? We're an organism, So there's something about things being organised, and we call these organs, I'm not being scientific at the moment, but I'm just sort of playing on words, is that our organs all have different functions throughout the body, but it's like a miracle, a masterpiece when it works together. It's a symphony orchestra, so the organs are part of organising everything inside of us because they're organising us, but that's when our organism is going really, really well. So I think about the L-Theanine, for example. It's one of those vital things that we've come across. It just helps you tip back into the balance where it's natural to be organised. It's natural to be organised in our thoughts. It's natural to our body systems to be all organised and working well together. It's not normal these days, but it is natural. It's our natural state. But we've got so disrupted by the forever chemicals, the electromagnetic frequencies that we might be playing with, the stresses, the traumas we've been through, the childhood traumas, the foods, the chemicals in the foods.
And the things, the screen and the socials and the amount of things that are being flashed
how many hours we think we should work for and what success looks like and how do I attract the partner I want and, all this sort of stuff has actually taken us further away from being organised on the inside.
I do want to be transparent in the sense that although I think this supplement is a game changer for me, it works really well for me, hence I've come home raving about it. Then you found this study, Dan, and we're sharing it with all of you. I will also acknowledge that based on our last podcast, and I hope the listeners are getting as much out of this as that I am, is because we also shared you were travelling a lot, I was travelling a lot, some of the stresses. And based on that conversation, being really aware of what I was concerned about and what I can do to take charge of that or to have a little bit more control and just sort of letting things happen, I got off the plane, or when I arrived at the hotel, I went for a walk. You know, I didn't just have a shower and then just sit there and get room service and then just, you know, more eating and more sitting, which you do for 27 hours on the plane. I went for a walk. The next morning I went to the gym. You know, I made sure I had a day in between. I was outside nearly that whole day getting fresh air. Central Park was gorgeous but cold. So I put things in place, and I think I was telling you, my greens powder in the morning. I made a plan, and I don't usually make a plan when I travel, but I thought, hang on, I know that this travel's knocking me a bit now that whether it's the link with perimenopause or whatever it is, it's just I'm not on when I'm traveling and it's starting to affect me. So I made a big effort to put certain things in place, and I did feel great. But I do think this particular, supplement, as I said, it helps with the sleep.
It's a piece of the puzzle.
But I almost felt better giving that talk than I do here in Australia. As I said, it was just the clarity. Mind you, I'll get back to you, everyone. I do lots of talks. Let's trial it for all of them.
Can I also say we had a discussion before you went, because we were having a talk, and I spoke to you about that you were seeing the trip. It's another one of those trips. You're preempting the danger of the trip and the stress of it.
And
how
oh my
it
God, I'm
affects
not
you.
going to sleep,
Da-da-da.
and it's going to knock me about, and then it stops me exercising because I'm so tired, and then I eat differently because of this. I was talked.
You were ready for a horrendous trip again, and I said to you, "Wow, close your eyes and feel that." And you're like, "Oh, I'm already in a terrible trip." And then we talked about, but how much do you love your work? How much do you love these people? How much? So you switched your focus to how wonderful this was. And don't worry, I'll sort the rest out. I'll get up and I'll go for a walk. And it was amazing because I saw you in the car before you left just change.
Yeah.
I saw you were like, because you saw it a different way before you even went.
The first 5 minutes, people either loved it or thought I was a huge just, sucking up their ass kind of thing. But the first 5 minutes, I did just acknowledge how grateful I was to be there. And I mentioned that I saw Deepak Chopra at this same I'm speaking here where I've seen some of, I think, the people that have
Great
changed the way I
minds.
practice and really influenced me. Deepak Chopra, Dale Bredesen, when I was with you, Danny, he changed the way I practice. I didn't know you could reverse Alzheimer's. I wasn't working in that cognitive space back then, 2017, 2018. So I've met really big people that have influenced my perception of health, the way that I see my patients, and I think some of them are the best of the best. So to even be there and be invited. So I started with that. I started in a place of gratitude, and it just made me feel really good as well. Beautiful. And I think everyone, felt that. Yeah. But I also thought they might be thinking, God, she's a suck.
Ingredients.
Okay, well, so it contains, this is a sleep wave debooster. So we spoke about L-Theanine. It has 200 milligrams of L-Theanine, although we will talk about how you can dose this.
Yep.
The other ingredient in here is lemon balm, which is a traditional European medicinal herb. It's an anxiolytic. It's designed to calm you down. It works in a similar way to L-Theanine in that it sort of dampens down cortisol, probably increases GABA, although I'm making an assumption there. It helps with anxiety. It helps to calm things down. And because, certainly Denise was taking this as well, it does have wider benefits in terms of its immune and metabolic function as well.
Yeah.
Now, I'll let Denise talk about that, but
very good for
I will just mention also that it's not just your regular garden variety lemon balm. Excuse the pun. It's a trademark form known as Relissa, which is a standardized trialed form. So it actually, when we say standardized, it has been grown to yield a certain minimum amount of the active
potency.
Constituents that we know actually work within the herb. And then it's combined, or it's actually we use a certain technology, which is a phytosomal technology, which basically it sort of allows it to be wrapped in a phospholipid shell, almost like a cell in our body, which makes it much more easy to be absorbed.
Wow.
So you're not only getting a standardized form of the herb, but you're getting a much more bioavailable, much more utilizable form of of the actual herb. So that combination where you're really sort of getting the herbal approach with proven anxiolytic function, so reducing stress and anxiety, with the now more and more researched L-Theanine, and then we know what it does with brain waves and cortisol.
But also the
it's a wonderful
absorption element,
combination.
because I think the liposomal C is sitting behind me somewhere here.
So that's a liposome. So liposomes and phytosomes are similar.
Yep.
Liposomes, the ingredient is sort of captured in the middle of the cell, whereas the phytosomes are sort of caught on the edges. It's but very similar in terms of their effect.
I'm glad you mentioned the liposomal C, because that's the other thing I was taking. So I always travel with vitamin C after having one rough year. I think you might have been there when I was in New York.
Yeah, I remember.
And I got really sick and I had a day. So it just came out of nowhere. It's like 2:00 in the morning I woke up and I just headache, nose running, so sick. And I had a day where I couldn't get out of bed. And even then the next day when I was sort of getting myself to the conference, but missed meetings, you're at these important events. Thank goodness I wasn't speaking. But since then I've travelled with vitamin C, and I do prefer the liposomal. But before this product, they're always liquids, and I don't really like travelling with liquids. So this is great. It's in a capsule. Yeah.
So you're getting all the improved bioavailability, all the improved absorption with the convenience of actually being in a capsule.
Yeah.
And we have studies, not many, but small study that I often talk about when I'm explaining, vitamin C and the benefits, if we're particularly talking about immune health or autoimmune, which I do a lot of education on. With the liposomal, it does have a better absorption than having just standard oral vitamin C. And if you did want to have a higher dose just because you are, a bit worried that you're going to get sick, then that's an option that you can have. So obviously there's, IV vitamin C that you can have, but that's not accessible to most people.
No, that's right.
The clinic I worked at initially in Melbourne, we had all those, but now I don't have access to that kind of thing. Plus, even if you do have access, you're not having that all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
So the liposomal is better if you do need to increase your vitamin C. And if you're traveling like me and you don't want to be getting sick, of course, I can't say for sure that it stops you getting sick, but it's worked for me.
Certainly supports your immune system.
And we know from studies too that actually even people, so marathon runners, are very prone to respiratory infections just after a marathon. Marathon runners that take vitamin C, if they do get sick, they tend to be sick for less time. So they're not necessarily saying the vitamin C stops you getting respiratory infections, but you tend to have them for a shorter amount of time and recover quicker. There's studies that have been going on since the 1990s.
Yeah. So just getting back to deep sleep. So look, the key point is, yes, take it for sleep. Have it, half an hour before you go to bed. I would, if it was a sleep issue that was ongoing, you can double the dose. So even though it says take one capsule daily, that provides you 200 milligrams of L-Theanine.
Because the study's around 400 milligrams, isn't it?
Well, yeah. So, and no problem. And we took 2 capsules just before we came on air. There's no reason why you can't take 2 capsules.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was hoping we could talk about dosage because I was taking 1 before I went away, but because I went away and I thought, I need the sleep's more important now, I was actually taking 2, and I think it's when I'm taking the 2 capsules that I'm actually noticing the difference.
Look, maintenance, everyday thing, just to keep me on an even keel. 1 a day is fine, or one when you take it.
What time of night, like if you're going pre-sleep?
Half an hour before bed.
Half an hour.
Yeah. And look, you can have this in the morning with coffee.
Yep.
So for some people, coffee switches them on. It helps them feel like their brain is being switched on.
Coffee and L-Theanine together.
Yeah, absolutely. You can take coffee.
Studies.
So what you get is that sort of bit of zip and a bit of focus, but you also get all the benefits of
coffee
L-Theanine
with alpha waves.
Yeah, so
exactly.
there's actually studies with caffeine and L-Theanine together.
Right.
As I said, I've come back and I've been researching quite a bit now because I didn't have a lot of knowledge in L-Theanine. I thought I knew it was for calming and sleep, but not so aware of this alertness and focus that came with it. But I did see studies linking L-Theanine and caffeine and saying that can be beneficial for people that tolerate caffeine well. If you're someone that gets, palpitations or anxiety, don't go and try that. But if you have coffee and you're fine with it, consider having that with the coffee.
Well, it's just a bit of a booster.
Also, also for me, if I think 2 things I'd love to focus on and achieve in my life, if I feel connected and alert, everything else sorts itself out. I'm quite capable of getting through the day, sorting out problems, looking after people, hearing, listening, seeing a bit deeper, solving things. Like my life's pretty good if I feel connected and alert.
Get connected.
So there you go. Thanks, mate.
So just to reiterate then, just a daily maintenance, or if you've got mild sleep issues, then you can certainly have 1 capsule, double the dose if it's, you really want to focus, you really, something like Denise's situation, or if you're suffering from, I suppose, sleep is more of an issue, there's no harm in doubling the dose. The lemon balm and the L-Theanine. This study did show that the safety profile of L-Theanine is great.
And making sure
no
you're
adverse
getting
events.
that best version of L-Theanine.
The alpha wave L-Theanine. That's
has
what
the
makes
studies.
this so special.
Okay.
It's the alpha wave, which is the patented form.
Yeah, so to, just validate what you were saying. So, one, for a bit more preventative, just helpful. But if you are going through an extremely stressful period, it's not necessarily you have to. Yeah, exactly. Then you can have that. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier, with the lemon balm, just because I have done research in that space and do so much with thyroid, and I think about helping people with hypo or hyper, the lemon balm, without a doubt, these supplements, teas, things like that. But the lemon balm, I think with hypo, because it is calming, I've read some studies that potentially isn't great. Mind you, there's probably a dose element there, but you're the naturopath and the herbalist, so I'd love to hear from you.
Well, no, I think it's a perfectly safe herb, and you would actually have to fall into that diagnosable state for it to become an issue. And even then, you'd need to take quite a dose for it to actually sort of provide you with an adverse event. It's one of those herbs that fall into this really wide scope of safety.
Been
profile.
around a long, long time.
It has been, and it's been used on kids, it's been used on adults, it's been used for a long time, but it is a great anxiolytic.
No, I do love those ones.
Yeah.
Those ones that ancient wisdom tells us it's been working for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there we go.
That's good to know, because if we hadn't have had that conversation, I would have been a little bit reluctant. Even though it's at a lower dose, I don't think it would cause any major issues. I'm a bit reluctant with lemon balm with those with hypothyroid, because I don't want anything to slow them down too much.
If they are diagnosed with hypothyroidism, then you avoid it, and you avoid any herb that would do something similar to that. But I mean that it's just such a safe herb that anyone that doesn't fall into that category,
correct.
it's absolutely safe.
Okay, we are keeping that clear then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Great.
Love this chat. It's good.
I know.
Well, we'll continue that theme. We'll go through some of these ingredients, because they are unique and they've all been designed with certain features that enhance their bioavailability.
And the ingredients are coming from the best places in the world by people that have been working for a long time to create that particular ingredient, to go with that ingredient, to go with that ingredient. So it's pretty cool what we've got in our hands.
Absolutely.
And just a reminder, if you are going through some anxiety, a stressful period, this can be something that may help you as long as you don't have diagnosed hypothyroidism. But remembering the other things, Trev just did the breathing exercise. That was so helpful. And as I said, when I was in New York, I put a few other things in place so that I ate well, I exercised, which obviously helped my sleep, didn't drink alcohol, which stuffs up my sleep.
Yep.
So, you still need to put some of these other things in place, but this can offer some support, and I'll be reporting back. And now this will be my new little protocol for pre-presentations.
Beautiful.
Denise, Trev, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you soon.